Back together again. This is a room we started out as a House Water Committee about 2.5 years ago, it seems like. It feels familiar to me. Chris, can you give us a brief summary of what we've accomplished so far?
Sure, thank you, Mr. Chairman. For House Bill 2302, first off, starting with the reservoir debt payments, I believe there's some general agreement to handle those through appropriation process, appropriating $52 million to be invested into treasury bills unless that debt's called into service by the Water Office. And the State Finance Council would authorize State Treasurer to immediately expend that account for debt payments. And then the other agreement from yesterday was to strike the unincorporated areas from the Water Technical Assistance Fund section in the bill and put some language from an amendment that was handed out yesterday to allow the Kansas Water Authority to direct the Water Office to provide funding for improvement of water infrastructures in unincorporated areas. If they're working with an agency that could administer that project, and upon receipt of that request, the Water Office would award monies in any fiscal year prior to July 1, 2028. And that's, I think, what I have for agree right now. There's discussion out on amount of funding to be transferred to the State Water Plan Fund in the 5-year program. We need to discuss the cap difference, or where that money would go for those two new funds, where the excess money would go. And I believe that's all I have right now.
Okay. So we're at the bottom of page 3 on the Water Projects Grant Fund. The House version was when monies in the fund exceed $45 million, any excess amount may be used for the State Water Plan Fund purposes. And the Senate position was if the fund exceeded $30 million, the excess would be transferred to the State General Fund. How do you guys feel about that one?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Since we had a night to sleep on this, when we take the $15 million per, that goes in per year into this, and if we're at $30 million, that's 2 full years of money that would be in there, and I don't see any reason why that would be there. So I would hope that you guys would consider if we just let it go to SGF as far as the wording goes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. When we talked about it yesterday, it seemed like the House position might be contingent on the total amount of money that would be transferred in that case. If it's less money, then perhaps we would like for that money to go back to the State Water Plan Fund. If it's more money, then perhaps it would be a compromise to go to SGF. I don't know if it's contingent on that for us to make a decision.
Okay, I guess we'll get into that issue a little bit too on funding. Where is your group as a committee at on the total funding? I think we kind of skipped that. We got past the reservoir debt, but when we were talking about funding, I believe we've already given up the sales tax and compensating use tax, so it's coming out of State General Fund. Back on page 1, you guys had coming out of committee had offered $35 million. Is that still your number?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. With the idea of that $35 million, we're trying to match what you guys were doing funding when we lay them all out. So we feel like that our position is trying dollar-wise to meet with you. And so I think at this point, our position would be where we were yesterday. So it'd be 35 million times 5.
So can you, I'm just trying to understand what the difference is between SGF and the state water plant. Why would it go back to state general fund if it's already designated for water? So can you help me rationale through that?
Mr. Chairman, I'm thinking, aren't we talking kind of two different things here?
We are.
Yeah, so 35 million would be happening every year. Back on that one, I envision that, I don't ever see us getting close to that number because we're talking 2 full years, because we're putting 15 million a year in there. For us to wake up some morning and say we got 30 million in there, I don't envision that happening. So there would be something wrong with the system if we had that. So I think that's why the SGF, and I'm basing that on some of the people that were, put that in on our side, so.
Thank you. It would seem to me that it might be a nice compromise, at least partially, if there ever were any excess money. Okay, maybe there won't be, but if there were, I think I'd like it to go back to water issues and the fund rather than just be gone as far as water is concerned. That might be a point of compromise then.
I like the senator's point. I would agree with that. How about you guys? Exciting. What's the results?
How do you guys feel?
I think we as a group would like to see it stay with the state water plan. If we were to go to the state general fund, we're looking at the timing of payments, and if as this process is starting, we don't want the water office to get caught with money coming in, and it takes about 6 to 8 months to do the rules and regs and the grant administrator for getting money out the door on the municipal thing, which creates a problem. We would definitely want to raise the 30 million to a slightly higher figure, or preferably, we'd still like it to go back to the water plan.
Mr. Chair, is that okay? So we were thinking 35, just to cover a little bit of the, if there were by chance, and we're only expecting this in the first year, maybe two, when they're getting everything positioned and make sure they have the right timing. So if there were two payments to be made, it wouldn't automatically revert back to SGF. So if we did 35 million to cover the first two payments and then it goes to SGF, I think that would be reasonable.
There might be times when they've encumbered funds for something that they have a definite purpose for. So if we all agree on 35 million and it can go to state general fund, what else do we have here? We had a small amendment on the stock watering. If Chris has those, we'd like to discuss that and propose that. We've worked with several groups, and this seems to be the language that everybody agrees upon. I've got a copy. Good. Sorry, I don't have a stapler, Senator. Okay, this would concern the stock watering projects, and so this amendment basically would, maybe Chris could explain it better than I.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the amendment first would, on page 3, would strike the Senate amendment on stock watering conservation projects from section 3 and renumber that section, and then, or actually, it would just strike it from the transfers in section 3, and then kind of in the subsection that directs KWA to take some actions with some of these funds. It would direct the Kansas Water Authority to encourage the creation of grant projects for stock water conservation projects. The grant programs shall prioritize the use of fees collected pursuant to KSA 82A-954A3, which are water protection fees that apply to stock watering.
So part of this amendment is technical in nature by moving the verbiage to the correct section, and it's verbiage that all the parties have agreed to. Would you guys agree? Okay. Okay, on page 2, have we already talked about the water technical assistance funds of 15,000 when the money would roll over? Did we agree to anything there? And it'd stay with the water plan? Okay, just to make everything clear there. So we're kind of down to the total number. You guys are still at 35 million? Okay. Would you like to?
Well, I can read the writing on the wall here, but I have to say it kind of feels like a slap in the face. Our committee's been working 3 years on this bill. We've gotten a lot of stakeholder input. We're trying to address multiple long-term and immediate investment concerns as it deals with water programs and projects in the state of Kansas. We had 50 or more people testify in support of this bill. And one person, I think we all know who I'm talking about, who hasn't been involved in this process is dictating its outcome. And that's really frustrating for me when we've had so much support for this in the entirety of its process. So I'll go along with what, the committee decides, but I am really frustrated with this outcome. Thank you.
So, I think when we proposed the 60 million, I think we were making a statement that this is important and this is not enough. And I think everybody sees that it's not enough, but to kind of accommodate for the 35 million, I think we'd like to propose that the water projects, the water projects grant, or is it the technical assistance? Technical assistance fund. The one that's 15 million be moved to 12 million.
We would adjust that amount down. We still believe that the Water Technical Assistance Fund, the initial 5 million is very necessary for municipals to go out and hire consultants and engineers to make their water plan, to try to leverage that against some federal monies for construction. If we're going to short anything throughout this bill, we thought it was probably most appropriate to, rather than 15 million on the construction, to lower that to 12, which gives the water office a little bit more flexibility. And so that's what we're proposing to amend on.
Excuse me. So that if I'm kind of just guessing here, that allows for FTE for a person who really knows how to help with the grants and that sort of thing. Is that what would happen with that other 3 million?
It could be used however the water office, the water office, to my understanding, currently has 2 unopened or 2 vacant positions that are normally funded. Excuse me. Anyway, they need to hire 2 people, and they're, with the grant situation here, they, in my opinion, they need to hire a grant administrator to set the rules and regs, and that needs to happen very quickly. We anticipate they'll do that. They're also a little bit shorthanded. I think their current staffing's at 19. They should be at 21. They may need to double a little bit, but they, with these funds coming in, they're going to have hopefully the ability to hire that grant administrator. Is what we're trying to do. And we realize that the federal funds coming in are huge. They're $200 million, where we were looking at a $15 million fund, possibly for cost share on those federal funds for small municipals that have a hard time, that don't want to raise their individual water rates for residences to $100 a month. And we were trying to provide some relief for that, short of being able to fund everything else. In the priority of things, we thought it's best that we short that one just a little bit to be able to provide for the rest of the programs this bill is asking for.
And also, by doing this 12 million, we were hoping that the backlog for grants piles up really long so that we can come back here and say we need more money. So, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So we're on page 1. You're saying that 15 million number become 12 million? Or am I reading that? Is that right?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Sorry, I don't want to move backwards, but I did want to clarify the agreement on the two fund caps and where the excess money goes. I believe there was an agreement on, for the Water Projects Grant Fund, which is on page 3, there would be a cap of $35 million on that fund with the excess going to SGF. And then what was the agreement on the Water Technical Assistance Fund? 15 million cap, and where would the excess go? It would, any excess would be used for state water plan fund purposes. That was what I heard. Just wanted to clarify.
I think we've covered everything. Oh, Senator Fagg, you had an amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If you want to pass that out, Chris. Mr. Chairman, whenever you get a little time to read, everybody's got to get technical with everything. Basically, what this is doing is empowering the state treasurer to still use the Pool Money Investment Board to invest these treasury bills if they want to. The word "or" is in there. So I think he's going to be shopping, see who's going to do it the cheapest and the best way he wants to. And that keeps that open for him.
Sounds like a wise amendment to me. I'd agree. Okay, sounds good. Cindy pointed out to me that maybe we haven't talked about the effective date. Our suggestion was July 1, 2023 in the statute book, and yours was in the register. Chris, which one's the quickest?
Quickest would be register, and that actually is what it needs to be if that appropriation stays in, since it's appropriated for this fiscal year.
All right, I think we would agree with the Senate version on that. Is there any other items here that we need to discuss? Let's let Senator Fagg speak first.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to say a thank you to the House. I know how hard everyone has worked on this for years, Representative Vaughn, and we all want to see this go forward. So I just want to say a sincere thank you for all your meetings, all the work you've put into this. You've done a real good thing for the state of Kansas.
Chris, you want to summarize where we're at?
Sure, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Okay, so starting with the appropriation, the Senate version for appropriating $52 million to invest in treasury bills unless debt's called into service with the treasurer's amendment that was agreed upon. The bill would provide for a $35 million transfer on July 1, 23 from SGF to the State Water Plan Fund with legislative intent to provide that same transfer through June 30 of 2028. The bill as it stands would keep the current statutory $8 million transfers to the State Water Plan Fund as well. The transfers to the new fund, the new fund's $5 million to the Water Technical Assistance Fund from the State Water Plan Fund, and $12 million from the State Water Plan Fund to the Water Projects Grant Fund, and those are made upon appropriation every year. Then for stock watering projects, the House Conference Amendment allowing for the Kansas Water Authority to encourage grant programs to be created for stock water conservation projects using stock watering water protection fees was agreed upon. The House Amendment from conference to include the unincorporated areas for state historical sites in the KWA section, where they would work with an agency, and Kansas Water Office would provide some money for water infrastructure projects for those unincorporated areas if an agency administers that project. And then moving on to the two new funds for the Water Technical Assistance Fund, the agreement was $15 million cap on that fund, with any excess amount above $15 million to be used for other state water plan fund purposes appropriated by the KWA. Then to the Water Projects Grant Fund, the cap on that would be $35 million, with any excess going back to SGF. And then the bill would become effective on publication in the Kansas Register.
There's a few things that we didn't get into, like 5-year sunset on this bill. And if this doesn't prove successful, it will revert back to the current funding of 6 million state general fund and 2 million EDIF, besides the fees to go to the state water plan. So I think we've come to a good conclusion here and something we can all agree to. Okay. I want to thank the water committee members and maybe even the staff especially. We've worked them extremely hard at times, and you guys have been great to work with. Thank you very much. And I want to thank the senators for helping us out with this and the work that you've done. It isn't easy, and as I've said many times, this is just a start. I want to keep moving forward with this, so we will be back together soon. All right? Thank you. Believe we're adjourned.